Philomythia podcast.
And we're on.
And we're back. Hey,
we're back.
This
Weeks
is, you guys
later.
don't know.
Weeks.
Is this the next day? Is this the same night?
You don't know. You don't know. Is there air?
It's the same day.
You don't
it's the
know.
Same day. Now we're here, listeners, to talk about how I planned this and what I did and how just to talk about
All
it.
the things.
So the first thing, first of all, Eric didn't really derail too much. I feel like I think Eric would have derailed if I didn't give him some good hooks,
Right.
to play with.
Right.
And I did. I felt because I actually planned 2 different scenarios.
Right.
And I gave you 2 hooks, and it didn't matter. I was like, I have either of these things kind of planned out.
Right.
I don't care which one he picks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving him a hook based on whatever his character kind of does is what we'll go with. And the way that, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Right.
First of all, I loved it. I thought it was hysterical. I loved your character. I thought he was great. I loved how he reacted to the crowd outside the bar.
Right. I'm not touching the 10-foot ball.
Right. I liked it. I was into that.
I really find, to say really quick, like bards, fucking great. I will definitely play more bards. And I love rogues and bards and like these more social characters where like,
right.
I love having to solve problems where you don't necessarily have super powerful spells. You might have one and the rest is like, okay, I've got to MacGyver this shit. Like, well, okay, press the digitation, distract them and sneak into the thing, you know?
Right.
I like that.
So I'm going to talk about how this started. So I gave a little bit on the last episode that I didn't even really start doing this until Thursday because Eric reminded me on Tuesday, and then I'm a procrastinator. What do you want from me?
Right.
So how I planned for this was a bit of a mess, honestly. And this is coming from someone that I've planned. And I've spent so many hours planning stuff for campaigns. And again, just like anybody could experience, I had no idea where to start or what to do for a one-shot. I've never done a one-shot before. Mm-hmm. And the idea of trying to contain a small story into a short amount of time. Even that was a pretty quick one.
That's pretty quick. We got through it.
We got through a whole thing that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that. So, damn it, I did it again. Lord.
What'd you do?
I'm saying all over the place right now.
Oh, you're thinking about it because I was talking about it. I know.
Yeah. So, what I did to plan for this, the original thing is Thursday. I was like, how am I going to plan for this? What do I want to do? So, I created a character. And I was like, here's the character Eric's going to play. And I made him. And then I started creating the story around this character and what he was doing. And I told Eric, I was like, hey, man, I made the character for you to play. And he was like, okay. I didn't realize. Sure, right. Man. And then I started creating the story about what was going on. And it obviously started branching out and changing as I was making it. And as I started doing that, I was like, oh, wait, Eric doesn't need to be this guy. That's fine. So what I did, and since I'm just going to burn this whole one session down right now.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what I set up. So what I did is I was like, I need something like super, super easy. So it's like the character I made was named Cleefy, Greenbrier. Do Goodly. Right.
Do Goodly. Yeah.
Do Goodly. And Cleefy Do Goodly was a war veteran that is now, he's the main guard or the main scout kind of guard guy at this little town. Mm-hmm. And he was going to have an adventure either going to look for the cook from the bartender, like the cook from the inn, or go look for the daughter that's missing.
Right.
Whichever hook pulled. And so then I created those things. I was like, missing people, as long as the character has some sort of reason to look for somebody, it will work. Now, I didn't know how Eric was going to create this scenario for him to care about either character. I didn't know, but I knew because I told him, I was like, the one thing that I want is that your character needs to like, I needed him to be kind of a good guy,
right?
Where he would care about people. And Eric made something that I didn't know what he was going to make, and it literally fit a scenario that I had created as we started planning it, like as we started playing, which you'll hear if you listen to it.
If you go back to our previous episode,
right? So what I did was I went into Roll20 and I just put a few maps in. I found the city map, which I was like, cool, here's a good city. This is what it's called. And I literally just the first thing that kind of popped in my head, I was like, this. And then I was like, let's have, that's the two scenarios. So if he goes for the church thing, it was going to be cultists because the church now got taken over by a cult. And this cult is going to be, they snatched the daughter and they were going to sacrifice her. And so if Eric's character didn't get there in time, she was going to die. And right, so she's dead. She did die because Eric did the other thing. So
can I talk about that really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So because I asked you what the name of this little one shot was, and you said something about a cult. I don't remember what you said.
Yeah.
And so when it came up, when all the people were complaining, I'm like, that's an adventure hook, but I'm supposed to go look for Dirk. What would my character do? And you're like, you can do either. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the forest. Like, that's what I would do.
Because I created 2 hooks for Eric to play on.
Right.
And when you're like, as I was planning, so I did that. So I was like, I thought to myself, and this is the way I planned it. This particular one shot is I wanted to have a little combat, a little puzzle, and a little social, just a little bit of each. The social was with the bartender guy.
Right.
And talking with him and kind of planning that night before, which was just a touch of social stuff. Then I wanted a puzzle thing, which I created on either side, depending on which direction you went, whether you went for the chef or the cook or the daughter. I had, if you went for the forest area, I had a little forest thing drawn up that was just a few squares where he could find encounters with animals, either a wolf or a bear, wolves or a bear, and then the cave where they had the
Goblin cave.
Yeah, the goblin cave. And then the other way he could have gone, if he would have gone with the cult investigation situation, the daughter, it would have been more about talking to the townsfolk to get information and then find out the weird thing out in the forest that was in a different area and save the kid.
Right.
I had names for townsfolk. I had Mayor Bartholomew. Ingrid Kane was the father of the child. Renfield Kane was the name of the child. And it was all based on that church. Right. And I had a lot of I basically made up all of the names. I just went with the first names. I have a few still. I have Harold Dusa. You could have encountered Tark, who was the bouncer at the tavern.
Right.
Let's see who else did I have. That was enough because I used some of them, like Dirk Seacrest. I used that name. So it just was going to depend on where you went. So I just had a list of variables depending on which route he went, whether this or that.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan what was this going to happen? How are these people going to act? I waited till he did something and then I reacted to it.
Right.
Because I knew where I wanted him to go or what I wanted him to kind of do. And that was about it. And if he didn't do it, I would still just react to what he was doing to try and get to an ending. But he he liked the whole Dirk Seacrest thing. With the mushroom pie. By the way, I did not know the name of the inn when we started, and I knew Eric was going to ask. when I was talking about it, I was thinking to myself, oh, fuck, I didn't name the inn. But I had the name of the guy who owned it. And I was like, it's Arnold's Mushrooms. I know it's a weird name, but I was like, I wanted the chef to be out looking for mushrooms is why he got snatched. Right. So I was like, that's it. It doesn't matter. He didn't know it was bullshit. You guys didn't know it was bullshit. It was bullshit. Right. I made that up right then. And then we kind of, it went on. Like I had the little map of the forest. Mm-hmm. It was a north-southwest type thing. And you encountered the wolves. You almost hit the bear, but you didn't.
I was like, oh,
and
fuck.
And then you found the camp. Mm-hmm. And I honestly had planned this kind of based on a character that could fight a little bit, but I also based it on that Eric's character was a high level, but I also knew even if I threw a bunch of minions at him, they could fuck him up pretty quick.
And to let everybody know, I made a level 8 character, which is pretty high. But again, I'm not a combat character. So my character is not designed class-wise to be in melee a whole bunch. And luckily I took Cure Wounds. It was very smart. Because even those wolves got me down past half my hit points. I only had like 46 hit points total. Right. I got down to like 15. I was like, ooh, this could go. I could die. I could die right now. So
see, that's that, and I knew, and I just had random. I had a forest map, mm-hmm. and I had the wolves tokens, and I had the bear tokens, and I had a cave map, and then I had the sacrifice map. Oh, mm-hmm. I'll show that to you. I know listeners, you won't see this, but are you still in Roll20?
I have it up. I had it up just in case.
And as I'll just continue talking about it, but I put through this together in a few, probably 2 hours, just in the, at night, and then some final touches the next morning just to kind of round it out.
Oh, nice. I like that. That's a cool map. I like the little diamond. Nice. So you would say you did about 2.5 hours worth of prep? Something like that.
Oh yeah, about 2.5 hours. And that was just real generic. I had my little notepad written down with names of people. And that was it. I had a few clue hooks and who he would someone will talk about this. Right. He can hear rumors about this. Right. Real simple notes. The ruckus outside mm-hmm. was a thing that was meant to get his attention, and he could investigate it while he was talking to the innkeeper. Right, right. Or he could have ignored it, or he wouldn't have cared about Dirk. That was funny to me that Dirk became this little, because none of them had, I planned on making them either humans or halflings. That was what my goal was with this town, humans and halflings. And Dirk ended up being a halfling, and him dancing around on the crates made it up right on the spot, because I knew the kitchen would be bigger.
Right, human kitchen.
So Yeah. So he would have to have adjusted to that.
And I want to point out too that was an emergent thing. As soon as you said he was a halfling and a skinny halfling, I suddenly just had this image of that. I'm like, oh, this is how my character would hang out with Dirk. That's just, right. And so suddenly I had this attachment that only came through playing through it.
Right. And I did not know if Eric was going to care about going after this guy, or if he was going to care about the girl. Mm-hmm. Didn't know. And when he created that connection to Dirk, I was like, oh, he's going to go save Dirk for sure. Yeah. So once he did that, I pretty much went through and made sure and kind of finalized as we were talking that section mm-hmm. of the stuff I'd prepped. I went and double checked. I was like, now, does he really need to face this much stuff? How many tokens? And I just double checked things while we were talking about stuff. Mm-hmm. And then when I offered you those, I was like, just to make sure, I threw out the hook one more time to him about the city, the missing person with the mayor and everything. And he didn't bite. So I was like, all right, we're not worried about that.
And that is why I asked. I was like, okay, I don't want to metagame because I feel like this is a hook. And you're like, no, you can do either. I'm like, okay, well, this is what my character would. He'd be like, okay, I'm not fucking with that. I'm going to go find Dirk.
And it was perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And he found Dirk. I didn't plan. All I knew is that the farmland, it was going to have to be outside of the farmland because it's, he has to get into the forest somehow. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, a little trail next to the farmland. And it's a game trail. It's not a human trail. It's just something that one guy usually follows to go look for mushrooms because, that's what he does is he cooks. Mm-hmm. So he forages and yeah, that's all of these things kind of, they were just simple things and you just kind of add to them based on how would that person exist in a world? Well, if you were like a little cook in a little local area, you would definitely forage the area to find unique things to cook with, different spices or local things that just are wild.
Right, because it's not like we're not in a big city. It's a little hamlet out of the way.
Right.
It's not like they have access to all the things a big metropolis would have.
Right, but they're, like I've said, they were also, since they're right off this path a little ways, they still get a lot of traffic, so they have good enough money to afford nice things, just to make sure that the town is nice. Like it's been this, it's just a nice little town, no problems. It was Greenbrier. Well,
so yeah, that was sweet. It had from a player's perspective, it had a very classic kind of one-shot feel. Like there's like a little problem to solve and it's self-contained and, it's like a little town in the woods, like the forest. It had that cool, like classic feel with the really silly, like ridiculous names.
Yeah. As
an extra, almost Rick and Morty-esque to me. Like I loved it.
I seriously want to know, like, cause I don't know what that's like for you. Like I'm being this person. So like, tell me more about it being a player. Like, what was it like?
For me, again, it was kind of the same thing, and I'm going to step out of the player role really quick and just comment this to Ian that kind of, oh fuck, I got a plan. I can get this shit done. That's what doing a weekly campaign is like. So fuck, like I don't have anything yet. I got to get this done. That's like, if you're running a weekly campaign, that's how it is all the time. Because that week goes by fucking fast.
Fuck yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, so I made my character this morning, because Ian was like, I made your character. I was like, okay. And he's like, no, you can make your own character. I was like, fuck. All right. Shit. So that's when I was saying in the previous episode, I used the Character Mancer for the first time. It was really helpful. So my thing was like, okay, this is a one shot, and taking cue from a lot of the other D&D podcasts I listen to. One shots are fun times to do characters you haven't done. So like, what's a race I haven't played? What's a class I haven't played? What's a concept that I just really haven't done? And so I was like, ooh, okay, Tiefling. They're not really my favorite, but I haven't played one. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Oh, Bard. Like, yep, that's what we're doing. I might die because they're this weird, nobody really knows what to do with the Bard, and they kind of get made fun of a lot. But I was like, let's do it. Because I love social characters, and I love characters that allow you to do things, solve problems in different ways, where you're not necessarily just, okay, we have to murder everything.
Right.
Even though I did murder a lot of things. But do them, solve things in creative ways. So I threw that together quickly. And then one thing that Ian and I both know now is like, don't just make a thing and then not tell your players or not tell the DM, either side you're on. Communicate what you're planning on doing so that you can kind of fit the things you're making to each other. So like, if I'm a DM running a one shot, tell the player like, okay, Ian told me the character needs to fit into the town. He has to be good somewhat so that he cares about others. So I can't just make like a chaotic evil character that's gonna murder on a whim, basically.
Right. Because then like a character like that wouldn't have cared about the hooks built into the story.
Right.
And then it's like, what's the point? There's a certain level of communication that needs to happen between DMs and players for it to go successfully. And it's simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. If Eric made his one shot combat heavy, he'd be like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to put a lot of combat in this. So just be aware of that. Don't change your mind about doing things.
Right.
But this is what we're going for.
And it might be a conversation where if I did do that, Ian might be like, well, can I make a multi-class character? Can I make a character that has some cool combat stuff, but some other stuff I want to do, or something weird? And so with Ian saying that, I was like, okay, well, maybe he's a bard. Bards tend to be scoundrels. That's like a, cliche archetype. So he got in trouble in Waterdeep, and so he's hiding out in, what is it called? Greenbrier, which gives him a reason not to leave. Like, it gives him a reason to stick around and try to integrate into this community, at least in the short term, because he tends to get himself into trouble in the long term, like sleep with the wrong person, and he's really, if you look at his TBFs, he likes money.
I read his TBFs, so yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was going to try and lean on one if I had to, but I didn't have to.
Right. So that was really informed it, and I was like, you know what? I've played enough now where I don't need to write a huge backstory. It's funner to decide things, almost Blades in the Dark style as you're going. So that's when I don't remember what we decided. Oh, his thing with religion.
Yeah, his thing with religion, for sure.
Yeah, so it was like, leave that open. That's actually a feature, not a bug, I've decided at this point.
You just let things become canon, that are interesting, and then... something, again, this was a one shot, but if that character comes up again, you never know what story turn will happen where all of a sudden that thing you made canon comes back and screws the player.
Right. Because
of a choice you made way earlier.
Fuck. Yeah. And
it's fun. That makes it dynamic.
Really fun. Yeah. And I almost want to add not flashbacks necessarily like Blades in the Dark, but say, don't pick your TBFs. Pick, beforehand, pick them as you play. So you're picking things that really fit to how your character's reacting on the table, quote unquote. That's
cool, yeah.
So because TBFs, especially if you haven't played, so your ideals, traits, bonds, and flaws, for those of you who don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, it's just basically your background and it's what an actor would be like, what's my motivation? It's your character's kind of underlying drives to be in the world and to even be adventuring. Most of the time when you're making a character, you have no idea. You're like, okay. And if you make a really solid concept, you basically over detailed it, where it's like, you never end up using that stuff. So it'd be fun to leave it blank. And then, the DM can design certain places where, okay, let's talk about this. What is your flaw? Yeah. Because you might want to steal something or you might want to do this. So that feels more natural.
That's what I think it'd be funny is when somebody chooses to do something, all right, that's going to be a flaw for you. You have this problem. That's your flaw now. And
explain to me how you got that flaw. Like what happened in your past,
Exactly. So and that's, create little fun things like that and that literally just came about from us playing a one shot and being like, oh, this was fun. I thought that was good. Dynamic for the thing, and it's funner to play, and it's also less prep on both sides, so it's less things the player has to do and it's less things the DM has to worry about. You can just figure it out and you're co-creating again. So that was really all I did. Was I was like, okay, this character's kind of a blank slate. He's really full of himself. I did think about the self-inspiration, which I was like, that is hilarious. If he if he inspires himself, because again, it's just me, so it helps me mechanically, but it's also like, oh, that guy is an asshole. He's you don't want to hang out with this person, and so it was just really fun to have the options. Okay, there's this hook, but if you're doing a one shot, a lot of times what I don't want to do as a player is I don't want to be like, well, I'm going to go in the forest, and Ian's like, fuck, I planned this whole cult thing, and now my player's gone off into the woods and I haven't made any plans. So that's why I was like, okay, wait, before I go out, because I want to, like Ian was saying, this is us. We're playing together. We're both players in this game. And I want to make sure that we're kind of touching on what Ian's planned for, even if I'm not doing it exactly. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah.
So, then it was just, once we were in the forest, at first it was kind of like it always is when you first start. It's kind of like, what do I feel a little awkward and anxious. And then you get into it. So by the time I was into the forest, I was like, okay. And then it just kind of had that classic feel. So I really liked the puzzle. And I like you kind of phrasing it as a puzzle as opposed to exploration, quote unquote, which is one of the pillars of play. But kind of trying to figure out this problem. Like, I'm not a tracker. I'm kind of this philanderer. Like, how do I find a person in the forest? That's not my forte. And I like that. Like, I'm not really suited for the task, you know, so it's not balanced, quote unquote.
And what that comes from is I created, like I was saying earlier, I created this for Cleefy.
Right.
And Cleefy was a ranger.
Right.
So this whole thing was based on him being a ranger. But then when I was like, why do I need to make him be a ranger? Why can't it be he's just he's whoever he is? And he's like, he could have been like sorry about that.
Ringing. Loud noises.
That's my bad. A little alarm going off. That's embarrassing. Yeah, it was just interesting for the Cleefy, and then you could have been a warlock for all I know, some spellcaster that's like, I'm trying to find my friend, just getting wrecked in the forest.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't know, and I mean, going again, all emergent based on what his character was. I had only a small 3x3 area that I was using for that thing. Like, you could have, it was not hard to get where you needed to get.
And 3x3 meaning like 3 little hexes? Did you have like a little
like
mini
just
hex
3
map?
squares, 3 squares, 3 squares. It wasn't even, it was just, that was it. And this square is where this was, this square was where this was, this square is where that was.
Nice.
And when you would move forward, we would just talk about it. And then when you kept moving, it would move you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I called it a puzzle, because you had to find where to go.
Depending upon which direction I went and all that. Yep. Yeah. And I think my 2 favorite moments were using prestidigitation to get into the cave. And then using performance to scare the shit out of the goblins. Like, things where, again, it wasn't combat, but it was using my class. And again, I've always been like, what the fuck is prestidigitation? Like, this seems like such a dumb spell, but actually it's really useful. They're right. Everybody who talks about it like lauds it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's really cool. You can do a lot of, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. And Jim Davis talks about how this is the kind of spell that everybody would learn. It's just like one of those things that it's like, you know, if you went to public school, you learn basic addition. It's one of those just kind of life spells. So I really liked that. Those are my 2 favorite things. Is like, oh, I got to get in here. It's really dumb if I just try to fight all these guys. If I can avoid that, that is better. So that was my 2 favorite moments, but I really liked, it was good. It was a nice little self-contained adventure. I thought you did really well.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I thought it went pretty well.
You're welcome.
It seemed good.
Yeah.
I also had a plan, because there's only Eric playing. I said to myself, if I've put too much on the board, I need to have a way to like mark that and help him. So I had Cleefy in the wings.
Oh, I was wondering, I was like, am I going to meet Cleefy?
You might have, but you would have had to get knocked down anywhere, and then Cleefy would have shown up and used Cure Wounds on you.
Gotcha.
And then helped you defeat wherever you were at. And then he would have, had more information, whichever route you picked.
Right.
He would have known more about the scenario and helped you through the next area as well, if you needed it. But you didn't need it, so he, we can say that Cleefy tried to save the girl, and I would figure that out.
You could. I mean, the cool thing about that too, that you have this other track, is you can just save that, and you have another one shot if you ever need it for something.
Absolutely.
So that's.
But I just wanted to burn it so the people listening and you knew that there was this other thing.
Right. So for me, I already know what's going on, so you couldn't use that exactly. But that's the nice thing for DMs and aspiring DMs. If you make something that doesn't get used, you have more material in your repertoire to use later. So it doesn't get wasted. You're just like, all right, well, I'll save that for a rainy day if I need something quick, I'm really glad I didn't know about Cleefy because I'm like, I might die. I'm just going to play as best I can. And if I die on the podcast, that's fine. Because we were talking about how, like, it's not a big deal if your character dies. Like,
right.
You know, I still felt like the stress. I was like, woo, not rolling good in the forest, rolling real bad. Not good.
Yeah. And, you know, when you're a DM and you're having simple little things like this, I planned, like, no matter what Eric class he picked, no matter which one it was, I chose to, like, I was like, all right, if I'll turn some of these into minions if he starts getting worked too hard and it's taking too long. I was like, I'll kill a bunch of them as minions, but I didn't have to because things just kind of went pretty well. I mean,
right.
I was the wolf encounter. I was like, oh shit,
could be bad.
And then, you know, the goblin encounter was good. I didn't know how you were going to get into the cave.
Right.
And when you got into the cave, I was like, oh, nice. That was good.
Yeah.
And then just all of the little subtleties of you not using necessarily combat, because, I mean, what was there, like 4 rounds total that you went through? Maybe 3 rounds total.
Yeah, with the wolves, it was I think 4 rounds maybe, and then it was like 1 turn for the bugbear because
you
capitalized. I was like, okay, how can I do this? I was like, ooh, another spell. I'm like, I really just want to see how this works. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Great. Love that spell. Awesome. I will definitely use it in the future.
By the way, the people are wondering why. Basically, as he cast that spell and hit the goblin with it, I thought to myself, how would a bugbear deal with this goblin that's just, when he's just laughing out of control? He's going to tell him to shut up. He's going to tell him to shut up, and then he's going to be like, shut up or I'm going to kill you, because these are his little, like, workers. He's got tons of them.
Right.
He's like, shut up, I'm going to kill you. It doesn't shut up. It just keeps laughing. It just goes, thump, done.
Right.
And looks at the other two, and the other two are like, oh, shit. Takes the spear out, looks over, sees some weird dude, puts 2 and 2 together, starts to say something, and then gets blasted, and all of his friends die right there.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, Eric's character was a little overpowered for this encounter, but to me it didn't matter,
right?
Because his threat of death was still there because he's a bard. Plus, there's only one of him, and it's just you just peeked into the life of a character, and he had some weird scenario.
And I think too, there's generally 2 ways they talk about handling. Well, really, there's one, but I feel like there's 2 now that we know to handle if you're going to do what they call solo play, which is you've got the DM and you've got 1 player. Because sometimes, maybe not as much now, you might not have a full party. There might be 2 of you or 3 of you. It's like, well, it says 4 players. You can still play. Usually either you have NPCs, so the DM has some characters in there that aren't full PCs. They don't have a full character sheet, but they're there to kind of buff the party and round them out. Or you can just make your 1 character or 2 characters a little tougher. Like in the DMG, they have not action surge, but you can use basically as I want to say it's a bonus action. You can use your hit dice to like heal yourself. Kind of like Ghost of Tsushima, you use your resolve to get back into it if you're, you want your characters to be a little less squishy.
Yeah, that would work really well with just 1-on-1 or 1-on-2.
Yeah.
Being able to do that, yeah, for sure.
And I still got pretty close. Like, I was still worried, even being level 8, it was still like, I'm not a combat character, so I'm doing things that that class is not designed to do, which I think is great. That's what I like.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good.
So, it was great success. Eh?
Great success. I enjoyed doing it. Like, it seemed like you liked it. So
I know. I loved it. It was super enjoyable. I had a lot of fun.
Nice.
I thought it was great. I also think, I'm just going to say this on the podcast, I think what would be really fun, because we're going to start bringing our friends on here and who also DM or who are also players, but it'd be really fun to have them on and then have them do a 1-shot for us so that our listeners can hear different DMs, their styles, because everybody kind of has their own thing, and they're all different, so like our friend John, his style of DMing is going to be totally different than Ian's, for instance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% different. Eric's style is different than mine.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never heard Shay DM yet, but I'm sure his is very different than mine.
We have an idea of the ballpark of Shay just because of how he plays his characters and describes. Yeah. So we're not going to do this. This won't be the next episode, but the next time we do a one shot, we're going to reverse roles where I'm going to basically be the DM and Ian's going to be the player and I'm going to design a one shot. So that'll probably be sometime down the line. You'll have to wait and see when it comes out. You have to wait.
And then that'll be interesting because who knows what Eric will plan for me.
I mean, this was like, I felt very classic and like cool. I'm going to get weird. I'm just going to say that. Ian's expecting that. He's like, God damn it. He's going to there's going to be like eldritch horror stuff in there or something's going to be strange.
He's going to be like, pose me with this weird thing. I'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
And I'll probably give Ian some extra stuff. Like I'll probably do the hit dice surge.
All right. Yeah.
Ian tends to make characters that are a little more heavy hitting. So I'll probably accommodate for that depending upon what he's thinking about making character wise.
It all depends on what level we do it at.
Yeah. We'll probably do, I think level 8 for like one-on-one play. I think we'll keep it there because that felt like a good, like, I don't want to have to put any NPCs in your party. I want you to be like, how many books have you read where it's just the one character trying to solve shit? It's almost
like a Witcher situation.
Yeah, exactly. More Witcher.
He's just this dude.
And
sometimes he has these friends that tries to solve shit with him and he's like, fuck.
Why did I bring them along? By the way, I've been reading that short story collection of The Witcher, and it's great. There's a ton of short stories in there that are actually in the first season. I was very surprised. And I know there's one that's in the second as well. So it's cool to see that. Yeah. He's even more gruff in the books, I would say.
Oh, I know. He's gnarly. He's a great character.
Yeah. And he's got that, I think it's the Southern English accent they talk about. Like the narrator is really good. He has like a very distinct kind of, it almost sounds rural accent for The Witcher. So he sounds a little more gruff and it's awesome. So.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I love to toot my own horn, so I can definitely keep talking about how awesome it was. But I mean, do you have anything else what do you think would want to be known beyond what I've already talked about?
I think, again, one of the cool things about hearing your planning was that you knew what things to plan because you've run games. So you're like, okay, I know I'm going to need this and I'm going to need this and I'm going to have two separate things, which that only comes from actually running games. So again, everyone's going to get really tired of this, but we're going to keep reiterating it. Like, just sit down and play. Like, sit down and run some games and have it go really bad. And I think the best thing you can do is be willing to be like, ooh, I didn't plan for this. Like, talk with your players, be very open. That at least for me relieves a lot of the anxiety instead of trying to keep it separate or behind the screen, quote unquote. So that's the only other comment is I liked hearing about your planning process.
Right. And you guys, I talked about it a little before, but we've mentioned it, but I was a wreck right before this. Like, before we played it, I was like, this is going to suck. It's terrible. This is going to be so crappy. I don't know how I'm going to describe anything.
Right.
But in that moment, like, just imagine being in that room. Like, if you're like, okay, this is an inn. What does it look like? It's made of wood. Okay, good start. What else? It's old. Boom. It's decaying. There's the smell of beer. Like, what would you smell in a place like this? What would you hear?
Right.
Just a few tactile things is all you need. Like,
and that's what we talked about texturing. Like, what are the five senses? What are the characters taking in? Because the DM are the eyes, ears, nose, taste buds, skin,
and it doesn't
of the players.
It's not something you have to like reinforce constantly. You just give them. You like when he entered the forest, I gave him some of that, and while he's in the forest, it's still gonna be that, so he's still aware of that. But then when he got close to the campsite, I added, oh, you start to smell a little bit of smoke,
right?
And that added this. Oh, okay, and things got weird.
and your little suggestions, my mind fills in the rest. So you say smell like smoke, and I'm like, I can instantly smell that. I have an image of what the forest looks like. I'm going along. Like, you don't have to describe every single thing, you know?
Right.
For sure.
You just give them a few tactile senses, just a few words. You don't need to be, I mean, if you feel like being super overly descriptive, I mean, do it. Like that's, if people are into it, go for it. I get nervous. So I just spit a few things out that I feel and let it go.
Right.
But yeah, I just kind of like imagine myself in a place like that and then describe what I see. And it's, you know, it's right there. I can kind of see, I'm like, oh, it's kind of lumpy, hilly, and there's pine all over the ground. There's saplings everywhere, and there's bushes and undergrowth, and, you know, it's like a whole thing. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
I enjoyed planning it in a nightmarish way.
Welcome to the on the spot DMing.
Yeah, it's there ain't nothing like being a procrastinator and then being like, oh shit, I got to do this, because I had a little bit of time on Friday, but Friday nights,
that's
D&D,
our normal
weekly. We played last night.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we did. And we thought we were done with the campaign, and then it kept going. And then it turned into kind of a romance novel for one of our characters.
Oh, it got super funny. Super weird, too.
Yep. Really weird.
Funny as fuck, though. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, it was pretty silly. We'll have to ask that player when we have them on. We'll have to ask them about that. Have them
yeah, absolutely.
Describe some of that.
They're good. It'll be fun to hear some of these people come on and listen. I mean, and talk with us,
right,
on all sorts of subjects. So
I think we're about ready to wrap this up, unless you have anything else you want to speak on.
It's hard to say, man. Like it's hard to like try to address like the audience when they don't really ask me questions, but you have questions. So I'm going to just go with those. Do you have any other questions on how I planned or
no
things I did? The way, if people are wondering, well, how did you know how many bad guys to put in? And I'll tell you this, I didn't know. The way I plan for numbers, and I'm sure Eric's way is different than mine, is I calculate based on maximums every time. So I look at so if it says 2d8, that's 16. So this guy can do 16 on his turn. This person has this many hit points. I always base it on the max number. And that always gives me a little bit of wiggle room below that, because they're not going to roll the max number. Right. So in my head, I'm calculating everything based on that high number. So, you know, this character has 40 hit points. Is that too much? Basic sword does this much damage. Some basic spells do this much. No, I think that's, you know, he could kill that person within 2 turns. How many damage does this person do? How much can Eric's, like, what's a good, like, right. That's how I base it, right, is those max numbers.
That's interesting. I tend to do it I'll look at the CR, which is the challenge rating, which isn't super accurate. It's not terribly helpful, but I'll look at that for a ballpark. I'll look at the number of attacks they can make in a turn, and then I look at the median damage. So the damage, every monster has the median, so you don't even have to roll if you don't want to. So a lot of times for a goblin, it might be like 5 to 7, where it's just like this, you can just call this number out because that's the average you'll roll. And then I'll look at, like, if it's a crazier monster, because I learned this the hard way. Okay, what are their special attacks? And, like, can they do crazy things that add on damage and that kind of stuff? So one question I did have, and I already know this, but we haven't talked about it much, is minionizing and what minions are, because we kind of steal that from 4th edition a little bit. If you want to talk about it.
Minionizing just basically gives enemies like 1 hit point. Right. So you just hit them and they die. Right. So it just it's fodder. It gives the perceived threat, but they go down really easy.
And the players don't know this, but it's also cool for the players if they hit somebody in the, the first round of combat and that enemy goes down, it makes them feel a little more heroic too. It has a little more oomph to it. So if you want to have a lot of monsters on the map, but you don't want the threat to be super high, you want it to be more controlled, minionizing is a great way to do that without gambling too much. You could say.
And for minions, like when you roll attacks and stuff like that, I usually will use that like a less than the median.
Mm-hmm.
If they're just a minion, just be like, if the median's 5 damage, the minion does 2.
Right.
It's just something to cause fear in the player, and they don't know. Like you could have 4 minions and 3 normals,
mm-hmm.
and they don't know which ones those are. So they could hit one and it drops, hit another one and it lives, and they're like, "What the hell?" They hit it again and it's still alive, and so it gives them this. They don't know how strong any of them are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it makes the players really like it. They have to pick their targets in a really strange way because they never know who's the strong one.
Right. And so it's fun to do. I like having minions because it's more movie-like to have them on there, because you never have, unless it's like a main fight in a action movie, most enemies go down in one hit, or like your hero like takes them down on one shot or whatever. So it's fun to do that. But that's the only question I have. If you have questions, listeners, like that's what we want to know. Like you can ask us. And also if you liked that adventure, pester us, because we could actually write it out. So if other people want to use that, so if there's people like, ooh, I want to do that adventure, we could actually make we've never done this, but publish a little adventure for people if they want that.
Sure. If you want to know,
that kind of thing.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have questions. If you liked it, let us know if you want more of that type of thing. Let us know.
Right. And we do have some live play that we'll probably do as a different series down the line. But if you like this format where every once in a while we do it in the main in our main podcast, then we want to
talk about how we did it and the strings behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Let us know. If it was stupid, let us know.
Let us know.
Don't be rude about it. I mean,
constructive criticism, people. Okay, people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna make you close this episode out.
I'm closing out again. Okay. Well,
I closed it out last time. You close this one out.
It's true. Well, listeners, make sure you drink a tall glass of water. Roll with advantage, and stay sweaty.
Stay sweaty.
Oh, hey, listeners, you've made it to the end. Give yourself a prize. Maybe a little cupcake, or some coffee, or hot chocolate, This is the credits, and we have links to all the things. So check down below, and you'll see things to the link tree, and the link tree links to the other links, and there's links to be had. Also, Jerry did our music. It's super badass. If you want to check out all his stuff, we have a link to that too. It's on SoundCloud. So remember to roll high and take a point of inspiration. Like, share, subscribe.